Okay, perfect. There we go. Yeah, so I usually just get people to start off with a little introduction. I know you kind of gave me one already, but I don't know, as formal as you want to get.
Recording, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you want to include, just whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Vivienne. I'm going into my second year of health sciences at Queen's University. And yeah.
Short and sweet, very nice. Health sci, that's a crazy program, eh? That's
Yeah, it was hard to get into, but now that I'm in it, I really love the program. It's exactly what I wanted to get into. I'm hoping to pursue a career in healthcare. So it's a really good segue into that. So yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you're in Vancouver right now, right? Like in BC?
Yes, I
Are you
am.
from BC?
No, I'm from Ottawa actually.
Okay.
But I'm in Vancouver right now because I'm doing like a research project. It's actually in epilepsy, which is super exciting. So I'm here. I've been here for a month now, and I'm here until July. So yeah, really cool opportunity.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool that you're doing it with epilepsy as well, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably add on a question about that when we
Sure.
get into that type of stuff. Yeah, so I'll probably just start with the first question here, which is pretty standard. Again, you can get into as much detail as you want on this, of course. So just tell us about your diagnosis.
Okay, so I was diagnosed when I was 12 years old. I remember my first seizure was actually in 7th grade. It's kind of a funny story. I was walking to the cafeteria with my friend, and 7th grade cafeteria, it kind of smelled a bit. So I remember saying like, "Oh, it kind of smells in the cafeteria today," and then my legs just gave out on me, and I fell down. And my friend kept walking. She thought I was just being dramatic. That's just kind of the person I am. So, but she didn't realize that like I had actually fallen down. And I thought that I'd slipped on something, didn't really think much of it. I'm a pretty clumsy person as well. So just kind of brushed it off, like whatever. It was probably wet there and I fell, right? But it just kept happening. I would have these episodes where my body would just go limp and then I'd fall to the floor. But me being 12, I was just like, whatever. So I didn't tell anyone until I think a couple months after I started. So I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up with my arms and legs just thrashing and I couldn't control it. But me being just a silly 12-year-old again, I was like, no, I'm probably just dreaming. It's not real. Like that's not happening. There's no way, right? So I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my parents, which is why, I didn't reach out to a doctor at all. And it wasn't until I literally fell down in front of my parents that they realized, okay, something's wrong. And then I told them like, oh, this has been happening for a couple of months, but it's nothing. Like probably just me being clumsy. So they took me to the doctor and I explained my symptoms, and literally immediately my doctor suspected that I had epilepsy. So I went in for an EEG, turned out to be abnormal, which confirmed that I had epilepsy, and that's how I was diagnosed. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, obviously. Diagnosed in middle school. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews at this point for Epilepsy Canada. I've gotten to speak to a lot of people, and it's always interesting to me how everyone's experiences are so different from each other, right? Like epilepsy comes in tons of shapes and sizes. So sometimes people are diagnosed when they're born, sometimes it's in middle school, sometimes it's not until they're like in their mid-20s, right? So being diagnosed in middle school is very interesting. What do you think about that, being diagnosed at that age?
It was very unexpected. No one in my family has epilepsy. I barely knew what epilepsy was. And, I didn't have any brain injuries, no like traumatic brain, just nothing. There was no indicator that I would have epilepsy. So I kind of knew that they were seizures. I did like my research, like, why am I falling down? Why am I waking up with my arms and legs thrashing around? So I kind of suspected it as well. But when I was actually diagnosed, it was kind of surreal. I asked the doctor, like, why? Why me? Right? and there was no answer. There still isn't an answer. And yeah, it was just, I think I mentioned before, I was embarrassed about my epilepsy. So I told like a few close friends. My family knew about it, obviously, but it's something that I just kind of held on to, like, just for me. And it was hard to deal with the diagnosis alone, pretty much, especially at such a young age. I was 12 when I was diagnosed, and I thought that it was something I had to deal with by myself. And it shouldn't be that way, which is why I started advocating for epilepsy, raising awareness about it on social media, because I wish that back when I was first diagnosed, I had someone to look up to and someone, just to see someone living with epilepsy, but also thriving, to know that like epilepsy isn't my life. It's a big part of my life, but I had so many other things going on. I just didn't realize it. Like I was part of competitive dance. I played piano. I loved swimming, but all that I could think of at that time was controlling my seizures, medications, doctor's appointments, like EEGs, MRIs, all of this. And it's so hard to go through that as a 12-year-old, So yeah, definitely
Yeah,
hard.
yeah, I can imagine, obviously.
Mhm.
I'm glad that you mentioned your raising awareness for epilepsy, and I know that you have the separate Instagram account where you obviously raise awareness for that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I just started the account. It's called Vivienne Purple. And sorry, my neighbor's like, okay, anyways, it's called Vivienne Purple. I started it at the beginning of May. And oh, can you hear that? Sorry.
Like, yeah, what's happening?
I'm not sure. I live in like a house and there's different units. So the unit beside me, I think someone's knocking on their door, but or maybe it's my door. Okay, sorry, could you hold on for a
Yeah,
second?
no,
I'm so sorry,
no
I'll be back.
worries. No worries.
Sure. Okay. Sorry about that. It was
That's
my
okay.
door. My landlord. Okay, I guess I should probably restart.
Sure.
Okay, so I started my account at the beginning of May. It's called Vivienne Purple, and I'm really just trying to raise awareness and advocate for epilepsy. So what I've done so far is um, I was kind of talking about my journey with epilepsy at the beginning, and now I'm kind of branching out, trying to hop onto trends on like TikTok and Instagram Reels, because I found that that's a really good way to reach out to a broader audience while also, spreading my message about epilepsy. I mentioned before that, when I was diagnosed at 12, I had really wished that I had someone to look up to. And I think there are a lot of epilepsy advocates out there, but there aren't many young epilepsy advocates, which is why I was really interested in doing this. I'd been meaning to do it for a while, but it's just super scary coming out with your story, on an online platform like TikTok and Instagram, because once it's there forever. So um, it took a lot of courage, but I finally did it, and I'm so glad I did. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. Some people that I actually knew before, who I didn't know that they had epilepsy, and they shared that with me, and that was just so powerful to me. Seeing people come out with their diagnosis, and it's just been really great so far, and I'm super excited to keep doing that.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. I
Yeah.
love hearing when people are starting to raise awareness, and that also goes into like wanting to do this interview and everything. And you're so right talking about how like
Mhm.
you need to be brave, I guess, to put yourself out there, especially when it comes to something so personal, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So I'm
And
super glad to hear that.
like, I mean, it used to be something I was embarrassed about. I didn't tell anyone, right? But now being able to share it with the world, it's just been super empowering.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can talk a little bit more about that kind of. And I have a question about stigma, and I guess being embarrassed about it kind of lends itself into that. So when we get to that, we'll discuss a little bit. But I'll just move
Yeah.
on to the next question here.
Sure.
So the next question is similar to the first, but it's more for like current times, I guess, like how you're dealing with it now. So the second question is, tell us about your experience with epilepsy.
Mm-hmm. So I've been seizure-free for 3 years now. But when I was first diagnosed, it was obviously very hard. Um, there are so many unknowns that come with epilepsy, like, am I gonna have a seizure today? Or even how many seizures am I gonna have today? Is this medication gonna work? What are the side effects to it? Like, how is it gonna affect me on a day-to-day basis? So it's just a lot to deal with. And when it's something that is kind of like a taboo, that that kind of makes you feel like you have to keep it to yourself. And that's definitely how I felt. Um, so I kept it to myself, didn't really tell many people about it. And even when I was really struggling with it, especially at the beginning of high school, people were looking forward to their futures, thinking about careers, and I couldn't really look past my epilepsy. That's all I could focus on. And that was really challenging, especially on my 16th birthday. I remember I was so excited to learn how to drive, but because of my epilepsy, I couldn't. And I would just like sit there and watch all my peers getting their licenses, doing driver's ed, and just having that independence was something I really wanted, but couldn't have. And because of that, I grew to really just hate my epilepsy, and I was always fighting against it. Um, but yeah, I I was really struggling with it, and I think that the struggle is what kind of motivated me to change my mindset. Instead of seeing epilepsy as something that was holding me back, I it took time, but I tried to switch my mindset to look at it as something that I can live with and something that I can thrive with. And having that switch in mindset really helped me um, look forward to my future and not let epilepsy, kind of define me. And I worked really hard in high school to get into one of my dream programs. My struggles with epilepsy really inspired me to want to pursue a career in healthcare. And one of my dream programs to get into was Queen's Health Sci, which is a notoriously hard program to get into. I wasn't expecting anything, but in grade 12, I got the email that I'd been accepted. And yeah, I just finished my first year there now. And knowing that my epilepsy is what pushed me to apply and now be in the program it's just so amazing. And I love the program. I love the people I've met. It's been such a good experience. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that again, obviously. I'm also glad to hear that you've been seizure-free for 3 years
Yeah.
now, which is great. I'd love to hear a little bit about like your journey to getting seizure-free and how that was.
Yeah. So I have quite a few different kinds of seizures. I described earlier the tonic seizures where I just fall down, tonic-clonic where my arms and legs thrash. Those are during the night, and then I also had myoclonic seizures. So it was really challenging to find a medicine that reduced all three types of seizures, but also didn't have severe side effects that affected me. I think I went through 3 different medication trials, and that was a really tough time for me. Um, every single medication that I tried, we had to try different doses. So for me, at least, they would try one dose for 2 months, and even if it wasn't working, I'd have to take that medication for the full 2 months before they would increase the dose to see if it would help. And if that didn't help, then they would try to switch it again. And then I'd have to go through the same process with increasing and decreasing the dose, trying to find um, a medication that worked for me. And it was really hard. After 3 medications, I kind of thought like, oh, if 3 didn't work for me, none of them will. And so yeah, that was just super challenging, thinking that I would have these uncontrolled seizures for the rest of my life. But yeah, 3 years ago, or a bit more than 3 years ago, I guess, I started a new medication, and it was my fourth one. I had my doubts, but we still did it, and um, found the perfect dose for me. I was seizure free for a week, and then the week became a month, and then now it's been 3 years, which is really amazing. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear about that, and thank you for sharing that. Obviously,
Mhm.
um, tons of people, like, it just goes back into how epilepsy is experienced differently with so many different people, right? Some
Mhm.
people find the right medication on their first try, right, and they don't have to go through it. And I've
Mhm.
heard tons of people talk about uh, like how you were describing the trials of going on different medications, getting off of
Mhm.
medications, and like all the different things that go
Yeah.
with that, which is it sounds awful, honestly. So
Mhm. Yeah.
um, it sucks
And
that you had
some
to go through
they
that.
have
Yeah,
drug-resistant epilepsy too, which is really interesting because they just don't respond to medication.
yeah.
And it's kind of cool because I'm also working on a research project in Montreal, and it's about doing surgery for people with drug-resistant epilepsy. So also something I'm super interested in about.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I'd love to hear about that. So obviously Epilepsy Canada funds researchers, right? Like that's our whole thing.
Yes.
We fund research projects. So one of the projects that I'm working on for the summer is actually going to Montreal to interview a ton of the researchers that are out there that we funded at
Mhm.
McGill and University of Montreal and everywhere. I'd love to hear about your
Oh, that's
project.
amazing. Yeah. So right now I'm working at the CHUM in Montreal, and I've just started. I just recently joined the research team as a student volunteer, which is super exciting. Not really sure what exactly my role is in the research project yet because I just recently started. But the general idea is that a lot of people with drug resistant epilepsy, or even people who are on medications, sometimes when you're on a medication for a really long time, the seizures come back. And after trying a lot of different medications, you're more likely to be drug resistant, right? So um, the thing that, or the area that the research team I'm working with is looking into is operating on people who have drug resistant epilepsy or people who are good candidates for medication, but have the potential to kind of like relapse and have seizures again and then become drug resistant after that, which is really cool. So I'm excited to get started with that.
Awesome. Do you know any of the names of the doctors or researchers that are attached to that?
Yeah. So the main doctor I'm working under right now, his name is Dr. Sammy Obeid, and he's really great. Such a nice person. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Very cool. Very,
Mhm.
very cool. I there's one researcher at CHUM that I'm gonna go uh interview there. I don't remember his or her name, but there you go. Very cool.
Oh, that's
Uh
awesome.
yeah, I'm glad to hear about that. And obviously, it's so crazy. Y- y- you're part of a group of different people that I've interviewed at this point where they've experienced epilepsy, they lived with epilepsy, and that's caused them almost in a way to go into health or medicine or research, which is really cool to see. And
Yeah.
you're directly correlated to epilepsy. Super cool. Very, very
Hmm. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, so we can move on to the third question here. Thank you for sharing
Okay.
that. This is a fun one. I mean, you can get into this. This is I have no clue how you're going to answer this, but the third question is: have you faced any challenges, stigma, or misconceptions?
Yeah, um, definitely. It's been really hard, living with epilepsy. I think the main challenge that I experienced personally was how epilepsy is viewed through a cultural lens. So, in a lot of different cultures, epilepsy is a taboo, something you don't talk about. Um, and I think whether directly or indirectly, I kind of grew up with this message that, like, I should be ashamed of my epilepsy. It's something that I have to fix before I can fully live my life and be accepted, right? And that's what caused me to feel embarrassed about it and hide my diagnosis. Um, I think on top of that, there's just a general misunderstanding about epilepsy. People don't really know what it is. When most think of epilepsy, they picture like flashing lights or these big dramatic convulsive seizures, and that's not always what epilepsy looks like. It's just a small part of it, right? So, yeah, that. And then also, I grew up with epilepsy. I was diagnosed in 12th grade. Growing up with it was brutal. Kids have said some mean things, and I've heard so many jokes about epilepsy and seizures. And I've even seen someone pretend to have a seizure for fun, which, you know, when you're newly diagnosed with epilepsy, you don't really know what this means for your life, how it's going to affect you. Seeing someone make fun of something that you're struggling with it hurt. It really did hurt. And all those experiences are part of the reason why I want to raise awareness now, because epilepsy, it's a common neurological disorder, and the amount of misinformation that's out there, whether that be, you know, perpetuated through the media or just misunderstandings that people have about it. I'm hoping to educate people about epilepsy, and I think the first step to combating stigma is sharing lived experiences about epilepsy, what it's really like to have epilepsy and live with seizures.
Awesome, awesome answer. This is my favorite question I always ask. I love hearing people talk about it, just
Mhm.
because I obviously come from a world of misconception. I had no connection, obviously, to epilepsy before I started working. So, coming from that background, it's really funny to see how many misconceptions there are about epilepsy and
Yeah.
like the general media and everything. Like,
Mhm.
flashing lights obviously is the big one, and wherein like when in actuality, like
Mhm.
one person I think I've interviewed has been photosensitive triggers for epilepsy, which is crazy. And it's so common. Like epilepsy is
Mhm.
unbelievably common, right? 1 in 100 in Canada is like the general statistic for it.
Yeah.
Um, it's always cool to hear. A new thing that I've heard from you now in this question is talking about the cultural kind of aspect of it, or how it's
Mhm.
looked down upon in different cultures, I guess. Uh,
Mhm.
that's how I don't know if how that's how you would word it.
Yeah.
I recently did an interview with someone whose kid has epilepsy, and they're from like a Middle Eastern-ish background and right different culture, and they were along the same lines embarrassed or didn't want to reveal the information to the rest of their family,
Yeah.
which is like a new thing. I completely didn't understand. I'm not coming
Mhm.
from that culture, right? So I'd love
Yeah.
to hear a little bit more about that, honestly.
Yes. Mhm. Mhm. And, you know, that's also kind of why I wanted to go onto social media with it, because, you know, I come from a Vietnamese background, Southeast Asian, and there are a lot of epilepsy advocates out there, but none of them look like me. Right? And I wanted to be someone that young girls or just young people with epilepsy can relate to. Um, and yeah, that's a big part of the reason why it's for little me and all the little people out there with epilepsy as well.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. Great answer, obviously. I'm also glad you touched on um, how it's almost important to hear like lived stories, I guess is how you put it, or
Mhm.
hearing stories told by the people that actually experienced it. And obviously,
Yeah.
I'm really big into that. That's like my whole here at Epilepsy, right? Is
Mhm.
they wanted to hear people tell their own stories. You know, like for a lot of
Yeah.
people, epilepsy is some like abstract concept. That's what it was for me before I joined on, where it's like it's this thing that
Mhm.
I've never experienced, you know, flashing lights, but whatever. But like
Yeah.
when you can actually like put a story to a face and like it's a real thing that people experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's
Mhm.
pretty well. I think it's good for raising awareness.
Mhm. And even like when I share my story with friends or you know, distant family, they're always just really shocked that I have it. Um, and telling them about my story, my journey with epilepsy and seizures, um, it really opens their eyes to a lot of the aspects of epilepsy that aren't really talked about. So like side effects of medication, the different kinds of seizures, right? So being able to be a kind of like a person who educates others is just, it's something I really enjoy talking about. Obviously, it has impacted my life in so many different ways, and it's a common disorder condition that should be talked about more. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Okay, I'll move on to the fourth question here. You kind of already answered this one. We kind of got into this, but I'll just get you to re-answer or restate it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So this is about medication. So how has medications or surgery made a difference or not been able to make a difference in your life?
So I had to go through 4 medications before I found the right one for me. And once I did, it was able to reduce my seizures, and now I don't have any. So I've been seizure-free for 3 years now, and it's allowed me to do a lot of things I couldn't do before. So an example I talked about earlier was driver's license. I couldn't drive. I couldn't even get my G1, which understandable. I was having seizures, so it wouldn't be safe. But now that I'm seizure free, I was able to get my driver's license and drive, which is great. Also, I grew up swimming and I had always wanted to be a lifeguard, but because of my epilepsy, it just wasn't safe for me to do that. Once I was seizure free, with the help of medication, I was able to get my national lifeguard, and then I worked as a lifeguard for 2 years, which was super fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Concise answer. Very nice. Awesome. Yeah, I'll go straight into the fifth question here, which is like our last main question. And you can talk forever about this one probably. Do you think funding epilepsy research is important, and why?
Definitely. I think that funding epilepsy research is super important in improving the lives of people living with epilepsy. There is just so much in the epilepsy field that is unknown. Lots of discoveries are being made about, new medications with less side effects, new treatment options for people, and most importantly, improving the quality of life of those living with epilepsy. I'm currently involved in a couple epilepsy research projects around Canada, which is really great. That has really opened my eyes to the possibilities of epilepsy research in improving the lives of people living with epilepsy or families affected by it as well. And I think that funding plays a huge role in allowing these research initiatives to be in place and to make a difference, because even the smallest discoveries can make such a big impact on the lives of people with epilepsy.
Awesome. Great answer. Fantastic answer. Obviously, I agree with you. Funding epilepsy research is super important. It's like our whole thing.
For sure, yeah.
So yeah, that's like our main questions. Is there anything else you want to add on, or anything you think I missed, or anything else?
I think I've pretty much covered it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, I'd probably want like just one more quick like statement about I guess just like raising awareness and your Instagram account again, and just anything like that you can think of. No pressure.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just think about this for a bit.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. This was just like a statement about anything.
Anything you want.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think that raising awareness and advocating for epilepsy is super important. It's such a common neurological condition that is so misunderstood. And I think it deserves that recognition, which is also why I started Vivienne Purple. I'm hoping that I can be someone that others can relate to, or if they even can't relate, then someone who, or I hope that my platform on TikTok and Instagram is able to reach people and educate others about seizures and epilepsy, because there is so much misinformation out there. And yeah, I'm really hoping to make a difference in the lives of people with epilepsy by combating these stigmas and how do I want to word this?
Yeah, you can take your time, reword it. It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm hoping that through Vivienne Purple that I'm able to help educate others about epilepsy, because I think that the main challenge that I experienced when living with epilepsy was having to explain it to other people, or having people look down on me because of epilepsy, and hearing people joke about it and not take it really seriously, when it's something that really did impact my life and still does impact my life. um, I think that education plays a huge role in combating stigma about epilepsy, because people, I think they mainly make fun of it because they don't really understand what it is and how it affects people and how common it is, especially. Uh, Even when I tell people about my epilepsy, they're sometimes surprised that I have it, because I was able to hide it, which shouldn't be the case. But, that's also another part of why I'm doing this whole advocacy thing with Vivienne Purple. It's to reach out to others experiencing similar things as me, and also educating people who don't know much about epilepsy. And yeah.
Awesome. Great answer. Great way to end it off.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, that's pretty much the interview. That's all the questions.
Yeah.
You did a great job. So you have your Vivienne Purple. Are you
Yes.
planning on doing any fundraising in the future?
I hope I'm hoping to start some fundraising. Right now, Vivienne Purple is a pretty small account, so I'm hoping to grow. And then once I hopefully have a bigger audience, maybe I'll start doing fundraising, because again, I really do strongly believe in funding for epilepsy. It's something that's so important in making advancements in the epilepsy field. So yeah, fundraising is definitely something that I'm hoping to support in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So if you ever go into if you ever do a fundraiser or anything like that, obviously feel free to reach out to us. We love helping out with that sort of stuff and promoting it. And yeah, that's our bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and then yeah, for the interview, it's gonna go out the same way that we do our other Face of Epilepsy. So just social media posts, right? Cut up into reels and a post. For the actual post, would you mind if we invite you to collaborate on that with your Vivienne Purple account?
Of course, that'd be great.
Awesome. And then it can get posted both ways,
Yes.
it can be on both accounts, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it'll eventually go out on YouTube in like the full version of it.
Mhm.
Take like a week or two, but when it's done, I'll send all the stuff to you over email so you can give the final approval on it before it goes out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Faces of Epilepsy is something I was kind of like, looking at before, and hearing people's stories has been so inspiring. I was looking at Cassie's story the other day, and it's just amazing. The work that you do is just so good. I know there's only 2 videos on the Epilepsy Canada YouTube channel right now, but I'm so excited to see more come out. It's really
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Cassie was the first one I ever did for Epilepsy Canada, which
Yeah.
was fun in
Yeah.
Toronto. Yeah, there's like 8 or 9 other like full ones that I'm just waiting to post over time.
Oh
Um,
wow.
the actual
Mhm.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll eventually keep rolling out in full forms. They're on like the shorter versions on social media right now. But I'm glad you like them. I'm glad that the response to them has been really nice.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And thanks for reaching out and wanting to do an interview. It's awesome talking to people about this. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
that's a
So
bit.
do you have more people like lined up for this? Have a lot of people like reached out to you to do the interview, or?
Yeah, it's slowly becoming very busy.
I'd
So
imagine.
we just secured a sponsorship for it,
Mhm.
for the Face of Epilepsy kind of series with Paladin. So for that, we're kind of obligated to do one per week in the future going forward. So,
Mhm.
So right now I have 3 more interviews lined up to do in the next
Oh,
coming
wow.
week
Uh-huh.
or so. Yeah.
I'm pretty busy then, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but I like doing it, so it's nice. It's a
Yeah,
good
for
mix. Yeah.
hmm No,
Some of
hearing people's stories is just so, it's really interesting because everyone has a different experience with it, right? Like
yeah,
I was really lucky to have been diagnosed and like my doctors believed me, but I know that's not always the case for a lot of people. So yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's very crazy how everyone's experience is different, and yeah, I hope you watch the full versions of the other one when they go up. Like you can
I
get to
definitely
compare everyone's
will. Yeah.
experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks for coming and do this.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the full thing.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be in touch with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Bye.
Bye.